Well, Hurricane Ian certainly left a mark on Florida that will be felt for many years to come, as you guys just saw in that last segment. As of this morning, nearly 1.4 million Floridians are still without power, and many still do not have access to clean drinking water and other basic needs. Help has arrived, though, some help. One of the leading hunger relief organizations is in South Florida, and they're preparing up to 3,000 meals a day to get food and drinking water to the most affected areas. And joining me now is that group from Pembroke Park, Florida, is Paco Velez. He's the CEO of Feeding South Florida. Paco, thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for the work you're doing. Now, your organization is on the ground in Florida, shipping and preparing meals. What are those areas that need the most help, and how is your team keeping up with the demand?
So, Tiffany, thank you so much for having us. As you know, West Florida was impacted pretty hard. So were the Keys. So we're servicing our service area, the Keys, as well as South Miami-Dade. But we're working with our state association, Feeding Florida, and our sister food banks around in Tampa and Sarasota and Central Florida, as well as with Feeding America. So we're coordinating efforts across 200 food banks to try to bring in resources, not just food, not just water, but also equipment and staff, so we can come in and provide a coordinated effort of service to those families who are struggling.
And my colleague, Ali Velshi, talked to someone last hour who was saying he hadn't taken a shower in 3 days due to a lack of running water. So the need is massive, as we know. I know it can be very difficult to transport food and drinking water with roads flooded and basically the infrastructure destroyed down there. How are you and your team getting people the help they need, given that the infrastructure is pretty bad?
Fortunately, the highways are open. We're able to ship product across 75, which is Alligator Alley, over to the West Coast. And since we're part of Feeding Florida Network and part of the state response, we're allowed to be on the roads and allowed to deliver where it needs to go. The biggest thing is really about coordinating these efforts to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. And more importantly, as Blaine pointed out with Pine Island, not leaving people out. We want to make sure that everybody's getting service. So we're able to get our trucks. We can't take the big trucks, so we're taking some smaller 36-foot trucks and getting that food and water, the much-needed food and water, and pretty soon cleaning supplies out to the West Coast.
Well, you know, experts say it's going to take a lot of time to fully assess the damage from the hurricane. We've been showing aerial shots of what's happening on ground there in Florida, and it looks pretty bad. It's pretty leveled there. And, of course, that's going to prolong the timeline for recovery. Is your group prepared for long-term food insecurity? And if so, how exactly are you preparing for that long-term food insecurity?
So our network, Feeding Florida and Feeding America, our network is nimble. We're strong. And this is what we do. We can pivot on a dime and make sure that we're serving those that are affected. One of the things that we're anticipating is some of the folks being transported over to the East Coast, where we are here, and being set up in temporary shelters, whether it's hotels or other places, just because there's really nowhere for them to stay on the West Coast, especially since most everything was either flooded or torn apart. So we are absolutely prepared as a network and as a food bank to serve those communities, as well as serve the families that come over on this side who are evacuating their home.
I don't know if you heard my colleague in the last segment, but she talked about folks on Pine Island saying they're not getting a lot of resources and they're desperate and they're sending text. And that's, you know, not connected to the mainland. Is your group able to do anything for folks who are not on the mainland? I know you said the highways are open, but what about the people on the island? Is there anybody able to reach them that you know of?
So we're working closely with the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, and those folks are the ones that are assessing the damage, and their primary purpose right now is life safety. So their purpose is to go out there and get those families over to the mainland. As we don't have the transportation to go across, since there's no bridge, we don't have the transportation to go across the water to get to Pine Island. So hopefully we can get those folks onto the mainland and get them the food and water that they desperately need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the work that you have been doing is very impressive, Paco. And just thank you for being on ground there. And we'll definitely check back in with you to see how these recovery efforts are going. Thank you for being with us, Paco Velez. And coming up later on the Cross Connection, they often get left behind during hurricanes. And we're going to talk about the effort to rescue our furry babies in the next